Ant Picnic was an opportunity for the students to use the academic vocabulary that they've learned. And also, one interesting thing, I saw them relying less on the word wall and using the experiences that they had with the ants to think of those words while they were speaking. And I saw this also transfer into their writing. Okay, another challenge that we've done is the egg drop challenge or activity. So this challenge has students to create using materials that we give them. We talk about um, different characteristics of material. Um, and also, this can be tied to a reading done by the NASA space lander on the moon. So we can talk about what kinds of material students may need. So we get into words such as pliable. We talk about the flexibility of certain objects, and depending on how deep you want to go, you can work with an engineer, and they can measure the materials to see the elasticity to get very specific information about the elasticity and just the durability of certain kinds of materials. So based on that, students create a a contraption that will safely allow their egg to drop from a certain height without breaking. And it's a lot of fun once you give the students the vocabulary to talk about it. They begin to use that vocabulary. And with this challenge, I noticed the students knew what they wanted to say, but they did not have the words. So we saw them going to outside sources, using their peers to ask, well, what does it mean when the material needs to bend a little more without breaking? And you see them look those words up, and so you see a lot of collaboration too. So again, that's the discourse. And once they have the vocabulary, then I have them explain how they created it, and then we do the drop, and then we talk about what happened. And again, that's more opportunity to use those academic words. One thing that could also be done is they could be decorated. So that's one thing we could do to add some art into this, and they could also begin to branch out and use some art vocabulary. But again, it's having them. I think once they do this, they definitely want to communicate this. A part of what I do with all of the projects is I have them explain them to an audience. Sometimes that audience is a flip grid audience. Sometimes it's a real audience, or sometimes it's to another class or another peer. But they always want to explain what they've done. This was another activity I did with some of the younger students I worked with. This was with a group of kindergarten and first grade students. We read the story of Three Little Pigs. And again, similar to the egg drop challenge, um, we asked students to design a house that would safely hold their pigs and be strong enough from the wind of the wolf. And so students use materials to create, and we actually use the engineering design process to talk about how we first have to think of an idea, how we have to plan it, then we have to create it and then test it. So they were able to use words like iteration and just prototype. Just really neat to see them using those words. And this also came from a STEM activity or challenge. Another one is a coding challenge. This is using a robot, one of the miniature robots, Sphero, and there's several others. There's Dot and Dash also. These are codable robots that students can use, and the code itself is using block code, which is fairly easy for kids to do, but it's a step-by-step process. So students really have to really understand sequencing. It's a good activity to get them talking about sequencing, and again using words. If they create a map, then they can use directional words. They can use angles and just words that have to do with turning. So these are a lot of vocabulary terms that are pre-taught, that students will use them when they explain what they've done after. And still another activity that we're doing, actually we're currently working on this one is called Tomatosphere. And students were given two sets of seeds, and one set of seeds spent some time in the International Space Station, and the other set's just a regular set of seeds. And so students grew them. And so throughout that growth process, we talked about cultivating, germination, pollination. So they had a chance to see that happen. And at the same time, they are also comparing and contrasting the two. We've created informational charts such as bar graphs, just to see how they're different. And students are explaining that information. And the important thing I think with this is, once they know that this is real work, this is real science, they're much more engaged, and they really want to speak. And so that's one thing I've really noticed about them. I know you're probably saying, well, if you're not a STEM teacher, or if you don't teach science, how will I do this? What are resources? What resources are available? This is a great opportunity to collaborate with the other teachers in your building. I have collaborated a lot with the STEM teacher in my building, and also with other STEM teachers on Twitter, and around the district, around the state. And if I don't know the answer to a question, I will just reach out to them, and also just seeing what they're doing, and bring that into my classroom as a scaffolded activity. And also, when the students go to these classes, hopefully they'll see this information again. I know the science teacher at one of the schools where I work, we talked, and they're only beginning to talk about flowers and beginning to talk about pollination. Well, for a few months now, the students have been talking about pollination, so they have sort of some background, so they can participate on a more level playing field with the other students. One other resource is your community members, the other STEM professionals in your community. Um, I've been able to work with researchers, and just Skype with scientists at some of the nearby universities. That's been very helpful. The students ask questions about plants to experts, and they get a real kick out of talking to experts. Your 4-H extension, the local farm bureaus, those are wonderful opportunities for just help. STEM professionals in the community, engineers, doctors, those are just excellent resources that you can bring into the classroom, so students can learn from them, and another source of of information, ask questions, so get a chance to practice using that academic information. And more projects and activities and challenges are available on SciStarter. SciStarter.org is a wonderful organization. It's a database of activities. I strongly recommend it. It's a great source. So I'll take any questions. And again, I know this is not live, but if you have any questions, feel free to tweet at me, and I'll also be online with the chat. So feel free to ask any questions if you have them. Thank you very much for your time today.